Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Hello and welcome to the Skeptic Zone, episode number 93 for the 30th of July 2010. Richard Saunders here with you from my little studio in Sydney, Australia. On this week's show we have an interview from TAM8, none other than Tim Farley from whatstheharm.net. What's the harm, you might say? What's the harm? Find out soon with our interview. That's followed by Dr. Rachie and myself on our regular spot on Radio 2GB in Sydney and MTR in Melbourne, where we speak to our good friend Glenn Wheeler. This time we had a phone call from someone interested in magnetic therapy and reflexology. And that's followed by Dr. Rachie Report, where she looks at some of the more wacky and zany goings-on with those crazy bunch at the Australian Anti-Vaccination Network. I wish it was wacky, and I wish it was zany, and I wish it was crazy. It's rather more serious than that. But Rachel will have a good roundup for us. Now, don't forget all you students out there who have registered for the amazing meeting Australia in November. You have until the end of August to write to the Australian Skeptics and put your case for one of our special rebate offers. More information at www.skeptics.com.au. We have up to 10 rebates, so students who have registered, why not check it out? Also, if you're going to be at Dragon Con in Atlanta this year, you can meet myself, Dr. Rachie, and our good friend reporter, Kylie Sturgis. We're all going to be there working very hard, doing a live Skeptic Zone and other talks. You know, it's not cheap getting to America, folks. I've got to level with you. If you want to help us, or you feel a certain love in your heart for what we do, you can always subscribe to the Skeptic Zone for only $1 a week. Or if you're feeling very generous, donate. It all helps us a great deal keep the show on the air and helps us do things like travel all the way to Atlanta from Sydney and Perth, in Kylie's case, for DragonCon. So, well, I think that's all I have to say for the moment. Sit down, grab that lovely gin and tonic or a vodka martini. I had a vodka martini at the amazing meeting. It was a special little get-together for some of the speakers. Ooh, that was nice. Oh, yeah. Might have one now. I'll do that. And you enjoy the Skeptic Zone.
I'm Dr. Rachie, and this week I bring you another interview from our recent trip to TAM8 in Las Vegas. This week I feature Tim Farley, who runs the website called whatstheharm.net, where Tim collects stories of how alternative medicines and pseudoscientific beliefs can actually harm people. Over the last 2 and a bit years, Tim's website has become an essential source of information for skeptics and media alike, reporting on the dangers of pseudoscientific beliefs, which now also features a section on how believing the moon landings never happened can harm you, and if you follow your GPS without looking at the road, you can also come to harm. I'm sure many listeners would have come across people saying, well, what's the harm in homeopathy? What's the harm in believing in ghosts? Well, here's Tim Farley to tell us exactly what is the harm. Well, here I am in the green room at TAM8 at the South Point Casino in Las Vegas, and I'm with Tim Farley. Hi, Tim.
Hi.
From whatstheharm.net, of
That's
course.
Right.
Is that your surname now? Do people say Tim Farley, whatstheharm.net?
Yeah. Well, people always come up to me and try to make some sort of a joke about it. You know, oh, let's go to lunch. What's the harm?
Oh, really?
It's getting a little bit old.
And you said to me last night that people say, I should have another beer. What's the harm in that?
Right, exactly, yeah. All that kind of stuff. I'm just happy people actually notice the site, so.
Well, you had a birthday recently, didn't you? I know it was a little while ago, but wasn't it the second birthday of What's the Harm?
In February was the second anniversary.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's about 2.5 years old now.
So tell us a little bit about the history of the website. So first of all, just can you explain to our listeners, for those who don't know, what's theharm.net?
Yeah, it's a collection of stories. It's a collection of anecdotes, basically about people who have been hurt by belief in pseudoscience, paranormal, all the sorts of things that skeptics focus on. And I noticed that there was a trend where people typically if you write an article, like if somebody writes a feature story about acupuncture, they would want to tell a story. So they would find somebody that was either hurt or helped by acupuncture, depending on what their story is, and they would tell that person's story. But each article would have one person's story, and the next article would have another person's story. And I thought, well, it would be really great if somebody would collect all these things in one place, and then you could see, and it's not scientific, and they are just anecdotes, but it kind of gives you an idea that these aren't just one-off stories. They aren't just the one story that you read in the magazine, that there literally are hundreds of stories where people have gotten hurt by homeopathy or belief in the paranormal or acupuncture or whatever it is. So that, once I had that idea, it was pretty straightforward just to build, basically it's just Googling, looking in old newspapers and things like that to find the stories and document them and collect it up on the site.
So you've got quite a lot of categories. You mentioned homeopathy, you mentioned paranormal. What are some other categories that you've got on the site? I've
got a whole ton of alt-med stuff, anything that I can find direct harm for. My criteria on the site is that I have to find somebody who's been demonstrably harmed and in some way admits it. I've tried to avoid those types of stories where, oh, look, this person has spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on homeopathy and they don't realize they've wasted this much money. It's like, well, I spent a lot of money on DVDs in my life, and some people would probably call that a waste of money too, but I'm happy with it. So I look for people that have really been hurt and would admit to having been hurt. And then the stories have to be documented. There has to be a newspaper article or a paper or something that I can link to, so that it's not just somebody sending me an email, that they're real stories that we can point to in the paper.
So you mentioned paranormal.
Right, yeah.
Can you give us some of the examples of people being hurt by paranormal beliefs?
Yeah, I've got like a Belief in Ghosts page. There's a couple of different variations on that. One is people trying to basically emulate the ghost hunters that they see on TV, and they go out and go into abandoned buildings and either get themselves hurt because the buildings haven't been maintained, or get arrested for trespassing.
Right.
There was a girl in, I think, Ohio who got shot by a guy who thought she was trespassing on his property.
Shot dead?
No, she was severely injured and spent a long time in the hospital and had to have surgeries and things like that because she thought it was a haunted house that nobody lived in, and she wanted to explore it, and it was someone lived there, and it was tired of people coming on his property.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot of crazy stuff. And there's a famous story in upstate New York about a woman who was trying to sell her house, and it turned out that she had kind of not really promoted it, but she had publicized the fact that she thought her house was haunted. And I don't know if she had tours or what it was, but she made it known that her house was haunted. And then she was trying to sell it, and she didn't disclose this fact to the guy who was trying to buy the house. And the guy found out, and it turned out his wife was superstitious and didn't want to live in a haunted house. And so he tried to get out of the contract, and there was actually a whole lawsuit and a major court ruling about whether or not you have to disclose to the buyer under U.S. Real estate law that your house is haunted.
And do you have to?
It seemed to hinge on the fact that she had actually publicized it, the ruling. That because she had publicized it, that made it something that she had to disclose. But if she just thought it was, as I read the ruling, now I'm not a lawyer, so I may be misinterpreting it, but it's a well-known court ruling in U.S. law. And there have been a couple of other cases like that where people were frightened about stuff. There was another case with UFO belief where people went out to... it was kind of a sad case because the people were obviously a little bit crazy, and they went out and thought they were going to meet a UFO out in a wilderness area in like the northern United States in the dead of winter. And they were sitting in this car convinced that this UFO was going to come down, and one of them ended up basically freezing to death.
What?
Yeah, absolutely.
How long did they sit in the car, do you know?
Like hours and hours, like half a day, something like that.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
But surely at some point, before you freeze to death, you would go, maybe I should go.
Yeah, well, you would think. That's why I say it's pretty clear that there was probably some mental illness involved in that case, which is always makes it a lot sadder.
Well, homeopathy is a big sort of topical issue at the moment, especially because of what's happening in the UK, with the National Health Service recommending that there's no more government funding for that. What's the harms have you got for homeopathy?
I think I've got like 400 and something, 437 or something like that. Cases, a lot of them from Australia and from the UK, where people have been advised to do something by their homeopath that was not a good idea and ended up dying of something that could have been easily cured.
So how much work do you have to do yourself now these days, Tim? Because I imagine you get flooded with emails, don't you, when something happens?
Yeah, when there's a famous case, like the current case with Penny Dingle in Australia, has gotten a lot of coverage. So I get like 2 emails a week about that one. But other ones, don't necessarily get as much coverage, so maybe I'll get 1 email on it. But yeah, it's gotten where the site is well known enough that people see cases and send them to me.
Yeah.
So that's good. It saves me a lot of trouble sometimes. And I get some fairly weird ones from other countries. Like every once in a while I'll get one that's not available in the English language press at all. I've got one sitting ready to go up on the site now that's from Sweden or somewhere, and there's no way I would have found it on my own because I don't read that language, but someone in Sweden who does speak English emailed me the links to the stories, and so now I have the case.
Do you know what's that one about? Oh, have you been able to interpret?
Yeah,
Did you translate it?
I haven't written it up from the site. The Google Translate had the info correct for it. You put me on the spot. I don't remember the exact details. But there was another one that I got from Slovenia. It was the same sort of thing where someone in Slovenia sent it to me. And it was actually the very first time that a medical doctor had been struck off in Slovenia under their current rules. It was an MD who also practiced homeopathy. And she did the classic thing where she recommended a guy who was going to travel to Africa use homeopathic malaria medicine, which was a big deal in England a couple of years ago when they found out homeopaths were advising that.
Well, Simon Singh was behind that investigation, and he was just out there name-dropping.
And this was a similar case in Slovenia, and the guy, of course, caught malaria. Then he came back, and she tried to treat him with homeopathy after the fact, after he already had malaria, and he ended up dead. And
he died.
And in fact, it was even a point where at one point the ambulance had been called to come pick him up, and she called the ambulance and told them to go back.
Right.
So it was just such a clear-cut case where she was completely misguided, and yet she was an MD, and she got completely struck off. But there's no way I would have found that case on my own because it doesn't appear in the English language press at all. It's just in the Slovenian press. So fortunately, someone in Slovenia noticed the story and sent me the right links.
So are there any particular stories that stand out to you out of all the ones you've got that you would think are the most crazy or bizarre or absurd ways of dying from?
The UFO one is probably one of the weirdest ones. The one that always comes up when people ask me that question is my feng shui story from Malaysia. Have you heard that one?
I don't think so.
Yeah, there were 2 families in Malaysia that both believed in feng shui, and they weren't really fond of each other. And they lived across the street from each other. Yeah, you can see where this is going. And there's something in feng shui. Feng shui is the Asian belief that, organizing your environment, arranging your furniture, painting your house a different color, et cetera, can help you balance the chi or whatever in your life. And one of the things that some believers in it do is they put a mirror on the outside of their house, and it's supposed to reflect bad luck away from their house. Well, one of these families put the mirror on the outside of their house, except it was pointed at the other house.
Right.
So it was reflecting bad luck into
onto
the other house.
Yeah.
And the other people put their mirror up, so the 2 mirrors were reflecting bad luck at each other. And that, plus the animosity between the 2 families, escalated, and it literally became a brawl in the street between the 2 houses. And a guy got stabbed to death in that brawl, a 26-year-old guy,
oh my gosh,
member of one of the families.
Wow.
It's ridiculous. And of course, sometimes I get complaints because people say, well, those 2 families didn't like each other, and obviously one of them was willing to use a knife, and someone who's willing to use violence might have done it anyway. And I said, yes, but the situation got to where it was because of the belief in feng shui. So that's one of the principles of the site, is that there has to the belief isn't always the full cause.
Yeah.
You know, like you could say, if someone uses homeopathy to treat their cancer and they die of cancer, you say, well, homeopathy didn't kill them, cancer
killed them. Yeah.
Right. But, of course, you know, they could have been cured, potentially, depending on what the cancer was and how far along they were, with other medicines. So I use that kind of, in law, I think it's called proximate cause, where if something makes something a little bit more likely, it's considered a cause of the crime or whatever it is. So that's kind of the standard that I use. I don't know if I'm adhering to it at the way a court would, but at least that's the rule of thumb that I use.
So do you get angry emails from people about?
I do sometimes.
What other stuff do they complain about? What's the harm?
The most common one I get now is the standard alternative medicine canard about, well, conventional medicine kills 40,000 people a year. Look at this study.
Vioxx killed this many people.
Yeah,
blah, blah, blah.
right.
Yeah.
So you get all those, and I always have to reply with the standard answer, which is risk versus benefit. Right? There's an obvious, demonstrable, scientifically demonstrated benefit to conventional medicine. If I break my leg, I can go to a hospital and they can fix it. You know, with a 99.9999% probability that I'll be fine after a few months.
Yeah.
You know, alternative medicine doesn't have any of that, right? You know, there's no demonstrable benefit, so why take the risk?
So how has the site grown in the 2 and a bit years, Tim?
It's grown a lot. I think I started with probably, 30 or 40 categories, and there's, I think, 78 categories now.
78?
Yeah.
Wow.
Some of them are admittedly weaker than others. I have a couple that are on there kind of for comedic value, like I have a moon hoax believers category, mostly so that I can link to that famous video where Buzz Aldrin punches the guy.
So what's the harm in moon hoax?
Yeah, right.
Believing you'll get smacked out.
Yeah.
You know, just on that, and I'm glad you brought that up, because we are at TAM, and
That's
Phil
right.
Plate gave a great talk today, but there is a moon hoaxer here.
Right, he was just out in the hallway just before we came in here for the interview.
Yeah, and he's been harassing Phil all day. So maybe if he keeps pushing it a bit further, he'll get smacked out too, and you can add it to the site.
I think Phil said something about that on Twitter today, that people were telling him that he should pull a Buzz Aldrin.
Yeah.
But, it was interesting to see someone who was actually a believer showing up at TAM. I'm not aware of an instance where that's happened before.
Yeah, unless they're going for the $1 million challenge, I suppose.
Well, being the one exception. We do get that sometimes at DragonCon, because obviously that convention is a little bit wider focus. It's not just a skeptic convention. So we've had many instances at DragonCon where we have the skeptic programming and some ghost believer will come in. And last year we had a thing
saw that,
where the guy started yelling at Joe Nickel in one of his talks.
Yeah. So was there another comedic one you were going to mention, or is that?
The other one is GPS. I have a whole bunch of stories about people trusting what the GPS says and turning left when it says turn left now, and they turn left and end up in the creek. And so nobody gets killed on that because, the site, admittedly, especially on certain pages on my site, it's just an endless series of dead children, and dead people, right?
Wow,
that didn't need to die, especially if you go to like the faith healing page or something like that. So I kind of felt like it needed a little comedic value. But people sometimes email me about the GPS page and they say, well, those people shouldn't be paying attention, that's just stupidity. That's not pseudoscience. I say, yeah, well, okay.
So I assume you've got the woman there that's suing at the moment Google because she followed Google Maps and got run over.
Yeah, I need to add her. I have a kind of a closely related page that's called Internet Misinformation.
Oh, yeah.
Basically relying on something that you put on the Internet. And I think she would probably qualify to be in both
categories.
and the Internet. Some of the cases are marked that way, where you'll see them in multiple categories.
Right.
Because as you know, believers in this stuff will often go, once they believe in one thing, they'll go to 6 other things. So you'll get somebody who's using homeopathy who also consulted a psychic. Or something like that.
And then to get to the psychic's house, they went to Google Maps and they got run over on the way.
Right. Yeah.
You know what? You should have an annual prize for like the biggest doozy of the year or something.
Yeah, that's one of the things I've been thinking about doing. The site's overdue for, as we record this, the site's overdue for an update. And one of the things that I'm thinking about doing is kind of adding more types of content, because right now the site is all just very simple write-ups of the cases and mostly links to news stories. but I don't get into any real details. Just a very short matter of fact, which is good. It keeps it simple, and there's no emotion to it, or not a lot of emotion to it. It's just the facts. But I'd like to do more where more substantial posts, because some of the stories are quite involved, like the Gloria Sam story from Australia from a couple of years ago. There's just a whole long story to that deserves to be told.
Including the fact that her mother sought conventional medicine.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, when they were in India, right?
When her daughter was suffering from severe eczema, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's...
So is that something you're planning on doing, maybe, is expanding on the stories?
Yeah. Expand, maybe pull certain stories out and do more detailed posts on those. Because some of the stories you don't have a lot of details to work with, so some of them wouldn't support it. But some of them, like the Sam story, certainly would. There's lots and lots of documentation about what.
Well, also on that, the Penelope Dingle story. I mean, that's still ongoing. And,
right.
I don't know if you know about this, but did you know
I've been following it a little bit, yeah.
But
I know there's an inquest going on.
Yeah, but did you know that he wrote a blog post about it?
Oh, recently?
Before the inquest was finished.
Oh.
Which has subsequently been pulled because I think his lawyers got into his ear and said, contempt of court.
Right.
But he wrote a very long blog post, which I think a few people have saved.
Right.
Screen captured, rather, where he was trying to exonerate himself and saying, I had nothing to do with it, it was the homeopath's fault.
Wow.
So we'll keep you posted about that if you're interested.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always interested in updates. That's one of the things that's kind of frustrating with some of these cases is you'll find the original story and a court proceeding will start, and then sometimes it's hard because the press is really bad at following up on things. Things will get settled out of court or whatever, and the press doesn't consider it a story at that point.
Yeah.
So you never really find, I don't have a lot of resources to go digging through court records and things like that to chase each one of these stories down, so I have to kind of rely on what I can find in the press. And sometimes it's quite frustrating because I know someone got sued, but I don't know what the eventual resolution was.
Yeah. Well, that's where the listeners can help out too.
Yeah, absolutely.
They can email you stuff, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, give the website address again, please.
It's whatstheharm.net, and, it's just very straightforward, simple website, and it's got the categories on the front page. I also do some stuff where I do, one of my other projects is doing Skeptic History.
Oh, that's right. On Twitter, yeah.
I do it on Twitter and some of the other services like Facebook and FriendFeed. I have it all echoed in. But basically every day, early in the morning, U.S. time, it's probably in the middle of the day, your time, I post a historical item that relates to skepticism, somebody's birthday or some famous event. Like yesterday, as we're recording this, yesterday was July 8th. And that was the anniversary of a famous raid when the FBI in the United States raided Scientology because the Scientologists were trying to infiltrate the U.S. government to find out things and to influence the decision about whether or not they would maintain their tax-free status and other stuff. And they basically charged a bunch of famous Scientologists, including L. Ron Hubbard's wife, with conspiracy.
When did this happen?
1977.
Right.
So it's 33 years ago. But it's important to remember these things because you think, a lot of folks are new to skepticism and maybe haven't read a lot of the older books and aren't aware that there's this whole history of stuff that's gone on. And in some respects, you see the same things repeating, but sometimes it's different. So it's important to know what went before. So I do that thing every day on Twitter.
And what's your Twitter name again?
My Twitter name is Krelnick, Krelnik.
Yep.
And I also do a Skeptic History thing on the Skepticality podcast, where I take the Skeptic Histories and I expand it out a little bit. It's a little,
I didn't know you did that.
Yeah, it's a little 3-minute segment. In the podcast, and so if the podcast comes out on a Tuesday, it'll be a couple of dates that are in the next week or so coming up. And I try to expand on it more, because obviously with Twitter, you can only just say something very quick and have a link.
That's on Skepticality.
That's on Skepticality,
okay. Which is actually the first skeptical podcast, isn't it?
Yeah, I think, basically April of 2005.
Right, yeah.
They Skepticality and The Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, I think, started within a week or two of each other.
Yeah. And hasn't the movement grown since then?
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's hard to keep up. There's so many podcasts and blogs and stuff.
Well, I mean, There's 1,300 people here at TAM this year,
right.
and Randy was doing a talk earlier on saying that next year they're hoping for twice that many. So we'll be taking over the whole casino.
We'll need a bigger hotel,
We will need a bigger hotel. All right, Tim, well, thanks very much for joining us. Is there anything else you wanted to plug?
No, that was it,
okay.
pretty much.
Excellent.
Thank you.
So, listeners, please head to whatstheharm.net.
Yep.
And if you have any tip-offs, please email Tim.
Yep.
To abuse him if you like as well. Or not. Thanks, Tim Farley.
Thank you.
And as you heard in that report from Tim Farley, he was talking about the case of Penelope Dingle, who died from colorectal cancer in 2005 in Perth, Western Australia. The findings of the coroner were passed down today, and I just want to read you a short excerpt from a news article about this case. It's headlined, "Poor Decision-Making, Poor Advice Led to Death," and it's from the West Australian. Homeopath Francine Scrayan has come under heavy criticism today over the death of cancer victim Penelope Dingle, with the state coroner finding she convinced the ailing woman she could cure her cancer. Handing down his findings into the death of Mrs. Dingle, wife of prominent Perth toxicologist Peter Dingle, the coroner said Mrs. Scrayan's claim was an outrageous thing to do. He said the homeopath was giving dangerous advice in which he had no expertise. Specialists had urged Mrs. Dingle to undergo surgery, chemotherapy and radiotherapy, but she opted for alternative treatments, including homeopathy. The alternative remedies included a diet with no meat or fatty foods and no animal or dairy products. He said that whilst Ms. Scrayan and Dr. Dingle had contributed to Mrs. Dingle's decision-making, ultimately the decisions were those of the deceased, and the deceased paid a terrible price for poor decision-making. Once again, another sad example of what's the harm in homeopathy.
Hi, I'm Dr. Ginger Campbell. I started the Brain Science podcast in December 2006 with the tagline, "The show for everyone who has a brain," because you don't need a PhD to enjoy my podcast. All you need is curiosity about how our brains make us who we are. The Brain Science podcast is not a self-help show, but understanding how the brain works will give you useful insights into your own behavior and the behavior of others. On the show, I talk about the latest books about the brain, and I interview leading scientists. Of course, I would love to be discovered by NPR. But until then, you can find the Brain Science Podcast in iTunes and at brainsciencepodcast.com.
Product has shown to be wanting.
Okay, well, Jack's on the phone. Jack wants to sing the praises of magnetic products. Hello, Jack.
Hello.
G'day. Go for it,
How
Jack.
are you?
Good, thanks. Thanks for the call.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thanks for taking the call. Look, I've known about magnetic products for over 30 years, and I've done a lot of reading on it, and I can personally testify myself. I had a very bad knee, and I didn't know whether this magnetic strap was going to work, so it's not like I was sort of convincing myself mind over matter that would work. And I put on my knee, I reckon it took about a week, and my pain completely went. And I didn't take any other tablets, medication. I did a lot of reading on magnetic products, and from what I understand, the simple concept of it is your blood has negative and positive ions, IONS, and when you apply a magnet to that, it attracts those negatives and positive ions, and it increases your circulation.
You've been reading their website, haven't you, Jack? Because that's what they...
I've looked at everything, and basically, everyone knows that when you have an increased circulation, be it through exercise or whatever, when you increase your circulation, that's what does the fixing up.
Jack, what do you mean by increase your circulation?
Well, you just, like when you exercise, your circulation, your blood circulation increases because your body's...
What moves faster?
You've lost me.
Your blood moves faster?
Your blood moves faster?
Your blood moves faster. It's like... your blood, your circulatory system is like... if you don't exercise, it becomes like stagnate water.
But Jack, what's this got to do with pain relief? You've sort of gone off track a little bit here.
Well, with pain relief, if you increase the circulation in your body, right, pain relief, like just say for instance with joints and everything, is usually caused through inflammation.
That's right. But
right. If you get inflammation in a certain part of the body, the signs it gives you is pain.
Yes, but right? Jack, do you understand how the inflammation process works? You can't flush it away if you increase your blood flow.
No.
Because specific types of cells are actually recruited to the site of inflammation as long as that inflammation remains. And you can't kind of wash that out like you would wash dishes or something. It doesn't work like that.
Right, okay, but have you heard of reflexology?
Yes.
Right.
It doesn't work either.
It doesn't work.
Now, hang on. I'm a qualified reflexologist, right?
Oh,
sorry,
okay. Jack, you're just the man we're looking for. You can apply for the Australian Skeptics $100,000 challenge if you can prove that reflexology works.
Well, I can prove it because my wife today, I married my wife through reflexology.
What?
Right?
How does that work?
That doesn't prove it works.
Did you read her feet or something, Jack? How did you do that?
Exactly what happened. About 12 years ago, we were all going to go out one night, and I was with there was four of us, and she was there with a girlfriend. And when we turned up to pick everyone up, she had shocking sinus, right? And one of the best results that I get with reflexology is with sinus problems, right? And she it was that bad she wasn't going to go out. And I said, look, listen, this might sound a bit weird, but I can do some points around your toes, right? Your sinus points around your toes. And I can just about guarantee you will definitely get relieved.
Jack, why didn't you get her to go for a run and increase her circulation? That would have worked too, right? That's what you've just told us.
No, because with reflexology, it works on your nerve endings, right? And those nerve endings, over the years, they get deposits of crystallizations of toxins.
No, they don't.
They don't. That's absolutely wrong.
No. Okay.
Listen. Time out both sides. I'm going to step in here as the adjudicator and say, Jack,
I can prove it to you.
Okay, Jack, that's exactly what I want you to do, because these guys have a standing $100,000 bounty on anybody that can prove things that they reckon don't work really work. Now, you're saying that you can prove reflexology actually works. The Australian Skeptics have a $100,000 prize to anybody who can demonstrate paranormal or supernatural powers under mutually agreed test conditions, okay?
Yep.
Now, here's your opportunity, Jack. I want to see you take the money, Jack. I'm on your side.
Right.
I want to see you take the money. So I want you to go to their website, Skeptics, skeptics.com.au.
Right.
And check out their website. You'll find this $100,000 prize offer on there. Get in touch with the Skeptics. Tell Richard. Send him an email and tell him that you want to find out all about it because you want to be $100,000 richer. And Jack, I just say good luck to you, because if you believe in what you're talking about with reflexology and you reckon you can prove that it works,
the money is yours.
The money's yours.
Take it.
Yeah, for sure. No, guaranteed. You could get 10 people, 15 people that's got problems, say neck problem, knee problems, sinus.
Jack, go to the website and let us know how you go, all right?
Thank you.
Go on, your buddy.
Jack.
There we go. He could be $100,000 better off.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There again, he may not be as well. 10 minutes to 11. Got to take a quick break.
Now it's time for Dr. Rachie Reports with Dr. Rachael Dunlop.
Hello listeners, and welcome to Dr. Rachie Reports. At the risk of sounding like a broken record, and I apologise for this, but we're a little bit pleased in Australia at the moment. I'm going to talk about some of the extensive media coverage that the Anti-Vaccination Network have been getting in the past week since the HCCC public statement was released. Now, those of you who follow my blog would have seen a post I wrote last week about how the media tide has turned on the AVN, and now they're being referred to routinely as anti-vaccination. But why believe me? I'm a skeptic, I seek the evidence. So this week I'm presenting you with some of that evidence that I've collected from across the media in Australia, so you can see for yourself how things have changed for Merrill. So first up is Steve Lieberman from Radio 2UE responding to a front page article on the Sydney Morning Herald about the AVN harassing the McCaffrey family.
Takes a lot to get me angry, but let me tell you this morning I'm angry. I cannot believe this story in today's Sydney Morning Herald about this group calling itself the Australian Vaccination Network. Who do they think they are? The Herald tells us that this group of North Coast wackos last year waged a campaign of harassment and abuse against a Lennox Head family whose 4-week-old daughter died from whooping cough. The little girl, incidentally, hadn't been vaccinated when she died because she was too young. Now, look, you can argue the case for and against vaccination. I happen to believe in it. But that's not the point. The point is, this group, the AVN it calls itself, accused Tony and David McCaffrey of lying about the cause of their daughter's death. This is the group that tried to get the baby's medical records without permission. This is the group that says whooping cough is not fatal and vaccinations are not needed, that claims meningococcal disease is harmless and hardly kills anyone, that vaccination is spreading AIDS in third world countries, and that vaccines, listen to this one, vaccines are part of a global conspiracy to implant mind-controlled chips into every man, woman and child. But overriding all of this is the fact that this group thinks that they can harass, abuse and threaten people who take an opposing view to theirs. Now, I don't know whether you've ever heard of this group, whether you've been in a similar situation to the McCaffreys. If you have, I'd like to hear from you this morning on 131332. These people, the Australian Vaccination Network, they're an organisation that should, because they are a threat to public health and safety, they should be closed down. Now, on the line is Ken McLeod. He is a member of a group that wants precisely that. He's calling his organisation the Stop the Australian Vaccination Network. Ken McLeod, good morning to you.
Good morning, Steve. Good morning, everyone.
What's your interest in shutting this group down, specifically?
My interest is that the AVN and its president are manifestly a danger to public health, and it is incumbent upon government to counter any danger to public health, and perhaps this is something government should be doing.
Okay, now we'll come to what government can or can't, will or won't do in a moment. But the reality is, can you shut the AVN down, given that these days it can still spread its misinformation via the internet? That's
right. It is an issue of practicality, and it is an issue of free speech. I did ask the HCCC to consider that, but the legislation does not exist for the Healthcare Complaints Commission to do that. The most that the Healthcare Complaints Commission can do is issue a public warning. I'm also suggesting that the HCCC consider taking out an injunction where the court would compel the AVN to put disclaimers prominently on their website to say that their information is misleading.
So, Ken, who is this Meryl Dory or whatever who runs this network out of Bangalore?
Well, I've never met her personally, but I've seen a lot of her writings and appearances on television and radio. American-born citizen that for some reason has taken upon herself to combat vaccination as a principle. Everywhere she goes, through magazines, seminars, lobbying politicians and so on. To me, it's all quite bizarre that anyone would question vaccination in this day and age, but there you are.
Well, as I said in introducing you, I mean, in one sense, you put the vaccination debate to one side. The thing that really irks me is that they would dare harass this family, on the McCaffreys at Lennox Head, that they would dare harass them in the manner in which they have, in the circumstances.
Yeah, that was probably what prompted me most to put in my complaint to the Healthcare Complaints Commission. I thought that the AVN had gone one step too far. I mean, it's all very well to question the science and to raise concerns and so on, as long as you do it honestly, but to harass a family in that way, as I saw on television.
That's appalling behaviour, totally unacceptable.
Totally despicable, and I thought something had to be done.
In this report from ABC's World Today program, Merrill claims she's not going to place the HCCC disclaimer on her website because she is, quote, not anti-vaccination but pro-choice and pro-information. Excuse me. She then goes on to say that she's a health watchdog. Well, if you're a health watchdog, Merrill, I think you come under the jurisdiction of the Healthcare Complaints Commission.
The New South Wales Healthcare Complaints Commission has taken the unusual step of issuing a safety warning against a group of anti-vaccination campaigners. The Commission says the group, known as the Australian Vaccination Network, has refused to include a prominent disclaimer on its website stating the information should not be taken as medical advice. Bronwyn Herbert reports.
Australia faced a whooping cough epidemic last year. More than 19,000 cases were reported and 3 babies died, including 4-week-old Dana McCaffrey from the New South Wales North Coast. Paediatrician Chris Ingle treated the sick baby and says since the Australian Vaccination Network became active in the region, immunisation rates have fallen dramatically.
They spook many young families into believing them that vaccinations are bad, that the risk outweighs the benefit, which is quite wrong. Ever since the AVN became active up here, the immunisation rates have fallen. We're the lowest in the state. We have pockets below 50% vaccination. Those are the pockets where the pertussis outbreaks succeeded. Unfortunately, it rolls out to the entire community, so everyone gets affected. And we've seen that in waves over the last 2 or 3 years, and poor little Dana McCaffrey was caught up in one of those waves.
The Healthcare Complaints Commission has been investigating the network. It's now issued a new public warning.
The Commission recognises that it is important for there to be debate on the issue of vaccination. However, the AVN provides information that is inaccurate and misleading. The AVN's failure to include a notice on its website of the nature recommended by the Commission may result in members of the public making improperly informed decisions about whether or not to vaccinate, and therefore poses a risk to public health and safety.
The Australian Vaccination Network spokeswoman is Meryl Dorey.
We already had 2 of the 3 items that the Healthcare Complaints Commission asked us to put up on the website, and we've had these things up there for years. The only thing that the AVN refuses to put up on the website, and we do refuse to put it up, and surely this is censorship at its highest level to insist that we put this up. The Healthcare Complaints Commission wants us to state that we are anti-vaccination, and we are not, never have been anti-vaccination. We are pro-information, pro-choice, and a health safety watchdog.
So you do advocate that vaccinations should be taken when it is appropriate?
No, we advocate that people make informed decisions when it comes to all medical issues, including vaccination, and that's all we say.
Meryl Dorey says since the AVN is neither a healthcare practitioner or educator, it's a breach of the Healthcare Commission's jurisdiction to investigate the group.
Bronwyn Herbert.
So, Meryl Dorey says that neither herself nor the AVN are health educators. But according to the final report from the HCCC, quote, Ms. Dorey speaks on the subject of vaccination on local radio and at a number of different forums, including the Bachelor of Naturopathy course conducted by Southern Cross University, pregnancy discussion groups, and the Woodford Folk Festival, unquote. And it was at the Woodford Folk Festival where she was referred to as Australia's leading expert on vaccination. Next up is John and Sandy from 2UE Breakfast Radio.
Now, we as a country, we have a pretty impressive record when it comes to childhood vaccination. I think around 90% of kids in this country are vaccinated, but there are still some people out there who are vehemently opposed to vaccinating children, and they're usually headed up by a body called the Australian Vaccination Network, and it's been conducting a long-running campaign trying to dissuade parents from having their kids immunised. It's a controversial organisation. It's long been criticised for circulating misinformation about the risks of vaccination. Vaccination is a personal thing. A lot of people feel very, very strongly about it, either one way or the other. But the Australian Vaccination Network is not afraid to put its views out there.
Indeed, there's a story today, and it's one that would make you just weep. A 4-week-old baby, Dana, died from whooping cough. Tony and David McCaffrey, the parents, in the aftermath of losing a 4-week-old who had whooping cough were trying to come to terms with it all, and suddenly found themselves with contacts, emails, nasty stuff coming to them from this Australian Vaccination Network. I can't believe it.
This is harassment. The network going to harass a couple who've lost a 4-week-old baby. The mother of the baby is Tony McCaffrey, and she joins us on the line now. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
I suppose for anyone, the thought of losing a baby at 4 weeks is just so tragic you can't even think about it. But then, to have a campaign such as we've touched on, it must have been shattering for you.
Look, we were just in absolute shock when Dana died. Our greatest heartbreak is that no one warned us about whooping cough. There was no warning sticker on her health record, and Dana was the third baby airlifted from this area to intensive care, and there were 2 the week after. So it was a very dangerous environment, so that's why we went public. But we was even more shocked within 3 weeks when we started getting anonymous letters to our home, started getting emails, and just since that, seeing the, the vitriol and lunacy that surrounds this issue.
She was too young to be immunised, wasn't she?
That's right. She was only 4 weeks old. So when Dana started exhibiting any symptoms, and what I mean by a symptom is she had a blocked nose and she was snuffly and a bit unsettled at night, which most newborns are, and that was at about 2 weeks of age, and she didn't have her first cough until about the day before we went into hospital, and it was just like a clearing of her throat, and Dana didn't have what they call a coughing paroxysm until 10 minutes after we arrived at hospital. So we walked in the door, said, here's our daughter, she's just been diagnosed with whooping cough, at which point she coughed for about an eternity. It felt like went blue and passed out and had to be put on oxygen, and that's how we learned about whooping cough.
Yeah, and your concern, from what I gather, is that you were concerned about the care that was given, how much information you were given, and what the duty of care from the health system was. You then talked about it and found this other stuff coming to you from people who were saying that whooping cough shouldn't be fatal.
Absolutely. Like, the whole reason we went public is because the week that Dana died, the day after she died, New South Wales Health asked if they could confirm her death in a media release, and we allowed that to happen anonymously because at the same time they were releasing free boosters for new parents and grandparents, and that meant so much to us because no one had told us. I mean, if I someone had warned me that the rates of infection up here were 5 times what they were the year before, yet not one health professional told us. That's why we went public. But then to see all this other stuff coming out and contentions that Dana didn't even die of pertussis, it was her medical care, or the fact that I saw rumours circulating that she was weak from birth. It was so offensive.
So they were sending you stuff saying it was all a conspiracy. They were using whooping cough as a cover-up because it suited their argument against vaccination.
It even went so far as Meryl Dorey ringing the...
This is the head of this network.
That's correct. Ringing Paul Corbin, the Director of Public Health, the day before Dana's funeral, the 12th of March, seeking her medical records, wanting to know how the test was made, contending that that there was no, confirmation of that test, and that the government was misleading the public in attributing her death to pertussis and therefore tricking people into vaccinating.
She's got no right to ask for your daughter's records.
Absolutely not. Yet she'll say now that we have no right to know that she called up seeking those records.
So did they start by, was it letters to your home? Is that how the campaign started?
That's correct.
So when you've opened the first letter, you must have just been aghast.
Well, my husband was the one that got it, and it was an anonymous type letter, and he ripped it up into a trillion bits, and I tried to piece it back together, and he said, just throw it away, we don't need to see that sort of stuff. I mean, we had other letters. We received one letter to our home that was addressed to the parents of the baby that had died of whooping cough, and it got to us. Within about another 2 weeks afterwards, we received another anonymous letter to our home, same handwriting, with an AVN brochure, and then we got another one a month afterwards. It petered out in about June last year because we had been on that Channel 7 show Sunday night, and I guess they'd been outed, and the emails had stopped coming as well. But the nature of the emails as well were quite bizarre, up to the point of very extreme, and others asking a lot of questions. You know, were we sure that that's what had caused Dana's death? And warning us not to speak up, in other words, because they felt we would harm more babies by speaking up and promoting vaccination and warning people about whooping cough.
Oh, gee, I mean, the Healthcare Complaints Commission's described this outfit as a serious threat to public health. You're probably like me. I can't understand why they haven't just shut it down. I
don't understand a lot of things in the last year. I don't understand how people can treat another person this way. I'm all for advocacy for all views. I'm all for choice. And I think the fact is there's a lot of parents out there who are concerned about vaccination and they want factual information on what the risks and benefits are, and I fully support that. And the whole reason we made the complaint was, yes, all this harassment hurt. We knew the HCCC had no jurisdiction over it. What concerned us more was that by contending that Dana didn't die of whooping cough, that it may mislead a parent to think it's not dangerous. And it is. 1 in 200 babies that catch this disease will die. You know, it's one of the top 10 killers in the world. And for those babies that survive, their poor parents would have 3 months of hell at home with oxygen machines every night as their baby has an attack.
You know, Mrs. McCaffrey, I think you're so courageous to have done that publicly, and I mean, there's nothing I can do about it, but I'm so sorry you had to go through what you went through after your daughter died. I just think you're just terrific.
I guess the main thing out of all of this for us is parents just need facts and they need information.
Yeah.
And all we'd like to say is we had 3 consecutive New South Wales Health Minister and Nicola Roxon last year say they would put out a campaign in December last year. It still hasn't happened. New South Wales Health are ready to go. The Feds told them to wait. And I just think it's just so sad that we have to keep putting ourselves out there to raise awareness of this issue, and that if everyone was a little bit more proactive, we mightn't have to do that.
Okay, just to clarify, this is the campaign on whooping cough, is that right?
They agreed that all the ministers got together at a national conference twice last year. They launched a big review into education and prevention, and they were going to launch a national immunisation strategy in December last year. So giving parents more information and to fight the misinformation. It was ready to go, and the Federal Department of Health and Ageing asked New South Wales Health to stop and wait.
All right. Thank you for joining us this morning and you putting yourself out there. You have again today, and we thank you for that.
Okay, I better go back and make those sandwiches.
Yeah, good luck with that. Okay. School morning, of course.
Yeah.
That's Tony McCaffrey there. She lost her daughter Dana last year, and the Health Care and Complaints Commission's actually issued a public warning about this outfit, this Australian Vaccination Network. And the person who runs the network, someone called Meryl Dorey, says it's laughable. She's seeking legal advice. I just think she sounds like she's laughable.
Yep, that's right. And the fact they hadn't started this education campaign, which would mean that there'd be information for parents who haven't got it and then turn to websites and get that's scandalous as well.
So in that interview, you heard Tony McCaffrey describing abusive correspondence that her family had received from people associated with the AVN. In true Meryl Dorey style, instead of keeping quiet and retreating to the corner, she has written a blog post today entitled A Grieving Family and Baseless Accusations. Dorey claims there is no evidence for the AVN harassing the McCaffreys and suggests if they did indeed receive harassment, it might have come from the other side. If, like me, you think now would be a good time to keep quiet and let the dust settle, then you wouldn't be Meryl Dorey. Here she is responding to an interview with Tony McCaffrey on 612 Radio ABC Brisbane.
Because I have Meryl Dorey from the Australian Vaccination Network with me too. Meryl, good morning.
Good morning.
What do you think Dana died of?
I really don't know what Dana died of.
And do you have any right to be requesting her medical certificates from a health department before parents bury her?
I never requested her medical records, so unfortunately Mrs. McCaffrey is incorrect there. What I did was, when Mrs. McCaffrey agreed to go public, in our local newspaper, the Northern Star, there was an article basically accusing people who had unvaccinated children of killing Dana McCaffrey. And they said that Dana had been admitted to hospital the previous week and was diagnosed with whooping cough almost immediately and was treated for that. Now, I knew at that point of time and know now that the most effective test for whooping cough is called a blood culture. And that takes 10 to 14 days to get a result. So my simple question was, while parents who had made an informed decision not to vaccinate their children were being accused of murdering a little baby, It was up to our organization as a representative of these families to find out how the test was done. I did not request medical records, and I did not contact the hospital as Mrs. McCaffrey has claimed.
Well, look, the Healthcare Complaints Commission has brought down a finding, and it finds that your website, your group, provides information that is solely anti-vaccination. That's not factual information, then, is it? If it only provides one side?
The Healthcare Complaints Commission, first of all, does not have jurisdiction to investigate us. Second of all, we are an organization that has been operating for 17 years.
Are you disputing their findings?
Please do me the courtesy of letting me finish a sentence. The Healthcare Complaints Commission investigated one page of our website. I provided them with a 66-page response, which they completely ignored. I also provided them with information from both a solicitor and a barrister to say that they did not have jurisdiction to investigate us. The Healthcare Complaints Commission investigators said to me that I needed to understand that the Healthcare Complaints Commission was a government department, and as such, they must support government policy which is pro-vaccination.
So are you going to change your website? The Commission says that you should do that. It's recommended. It says that your information is both inaccurate and misleading. Are you going to change it in any way?
We showed, first of all, we have 2 disclaimers on the website, and we had them for years, and we've shown that to the healthcare.
Yes, but they've still made this finding. Are you going to change it in any way?
We are right now seeking legal advice. We do not feel that any government department has the right to censor.
No, but a woman's lost her child. A family's lost their 4-week-old baby to whooping cough. Do you have anything to say to that mum who's listening?
Well, I said at the very beginning that it was a tragic loss, and the death of any child is tragic. But the death of a child from a vaccine reaction is also tragic. Why aren't these families getting the media coverage and the sympathy that the McCaffreys are getting? All children are important. All deaths are important. I have never contacted the McCaffreys. I never will contact them.
All right, Meryl Dorey, thank you. Meryl Dorey's from the Australian Vaccination Network.
Meryl goes into more detail about the claims in this interview in her blog post from today. You can find it at avn.org.au and look for the blog link. The McCaffreys have since responded to her claims that she did not harass them in a post which has been published on the Facebook page Stop the Australian Vaccination Network. When Tony McCaffrey refers to Meryl saying Dana supposedly died of whooping cough, well, it seems Meryl doesn't think whooping cough's really that bad anyway, as she says so on Channel 7's Sunday night program in 2009.
My mother used to put me with all the neighborhood kids when they got these diseases, so I'd get them and get them over with and be immune. And there was no fear. There was no worry about it. We just got them. We were supposed to get them, and we did. And we were healthier for them. Now, we have a medical community that's saying if you get measles, if you get whooping cough, you're going to die from it. Well, where is the information from that? You didn't die from it 30 years ago, and you're not going to die from it today.
And finally, here's an excerpt from the Steve Kinane Late Line interview which kicked off the media coverage of the HCCC report, where he catches Meryl Dorey out for saying something she didn't think she said. And until next time, this has been Dr. Rachie Reports.
Okay, there is a post that you made in reference to the skeptics which said, "Isn't it incredible how they have made Dana into a martyr because she supposedly died from whooping cough?" Now, could you...
Did I say that?
Yeah.
I don't believe I did.
Okay.
Let me see. But ignore all of the children and adults who have died after vaccination.
Yeah, but you still said that.
I did say that, and I still think that a death is a death.
Could you imagine reading that? If your daughter had died of whooping cough, well, how would that make you feel?
Can you imagine reading the Stop the AVN site or the Dana site?
I'm asking you about comments you've made. I'm not asking you about comments they've made.
That's fine.
Can you imagine reading those comments?
I can imagine, and it would probably be hurtful, and I would be sorry if she felt hurt from what I had said.
Thank you for listening to The Skeptic Zone. Now, next week, let me see, I've got quite a selection of interviews to bring to you. I might very well bring you the interview I did with, maybe Phil Plait, the bad astronomer. Maybe. We'll see. We'll see. It's a good interview. Actually, it's Rachie and I interviewing Phil Plait. Yeah, I think that might be well worth it. Until then, thank you once again. This is Richard Saunders signing off. That vodka martini was nice. Can I have another one? Yeah. This is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia.
You've been listening to The Skeptic Zone. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for comments, contacts, and extra video reports.
The Skeptic Zone.